The liberation of Saronicon in 12M31. An expeditionary force composed of elements of the Ultramarines and the Calth High Guard Solar Auxilia regiments of the Imperial Army under Ultramarines' command was dispatched by Lionel Johnson to pacify the hive worlds of the Saronicon Gulf. The Ultramarines and their support troops engaged with rebellious Imperial Army regiments and rogue fleets of the World Eaters Legion in a prolonged campaign across 3 star systems. Eventually, the Sons of Guilliman emerged from this conflict bloodied but victorious. However, their victory came at the cost of their expeditionary force being left behind by the Dark Angels, who moved on to the next stages of their relentless campaign of extermination against the traitors' worlds, free from the scrutiny and increasing unease of the Ultramarines and their tactics. The Fall of Luth Tyr in 12M31. The Dark Angels' fleet reached Luth Tyr, a key mustering world for the traitors, located upon one of the most stable warp routes in the southern Imperium. Lionel Johnson could ill afford the obliteration of such a valuable prize, and ordered his Knight Praetors to deploy their orders and capture the world in the name of Terra. The Dark Angels made planetfall in the wake of an orbital bombardment so intense that it fused the planet's rolling white desert into plains of jagged glass and set the upper layers of the atmosphere ablaze. Luth Tyr's Iron Warriors garrison and their Death Guard allies mounted a valiant resistance against overwhelming enemy numbers. But one by one their strongholds were blasted to rubble and utterly destroyed by the Dark Angels. Isolated Iron Warriors' forces mounted desperate last stands among the ruins of shattered fortresses and broken refineries across the world, with the death toll continuing to rise for the invading loyalists. During the fighting, a combined Death Guard, Iron Warriors, and Dark Mechanicum force mounted a daring attempt to reach Luth Tyr's tertiary spaceport at the planet's south pole. They fought their way through massed loyalist forces and packs of raging ambols in a desperate bid to reach the spaceport's warp-capable craft, which they used to escape into the void, leaving Luth Tyr firmly under Imperial control. The Siege of Inwit in 13M31. Hungry for the strategic prize that Rogal Dorn's homeworld represented in the industrial wealth of its surrounding stellar pocket empire, a vast traitor fleet led by elements of the Emperor's Children and roving forces allied to the Warmaster Horus attacked the worlds of the Inwit cluster. Each piecemeal assault was repelled by the garrison of Imperial Fists and loyalist Solar Auxilia forces stationed in the system, who in turn were forced to fall back from their forward positions in clashes of growing intensity. Eventually, the loyalists retreated to Inwit itself, where they were besieged by the numerically superior traitor fleets. The Imperial Fists lost dozens of warships in desperate attempts to break the blockade and seek reinforcements. However, the frigate Astral Majesty managed to break through to a Mandeville point and successfully translate into the warp. The heavily damaged warship of the Imperial Fists was forced to exit the warp near the system of Amaranthine in the galactic south, where, by chance alone, it encountered a scout element of the Dark Angels fleet. The surviving Imperial Fists were taken before Lionel Johnson to request the assistance of the Dark Angels in lifting the siege of Inwit, but they were denied. The Sons of Dawn were instead conscripted by the Lord of the First Legion to be part of his crusade of vengeance. They reluctantly joined their forces with those of the Angels and aided them in the prosecution of their campaign, leaving behind the people of Inwit to face their enemies alone and without aid. The Thassos Incident in 13M31. A Dark Angels flotilla was sent to investigate rumors of an unidentified fleet lurking in the isolated Thassos system in the Segmentum Tempestus. The Dark Angels were ambushed by a reaving warband of the Night Lords as they arrived in the system and suffered severe losses. The Night Lords were denied the killing blow when an irregular fleet of warships bearing the sigils of the Iron Hands, the Salamanders, and the Raven Guard emerged from the asteroid field around the world of Thassos Secundus and intervened. Caught between the surviving Dark Angels vessels and the newly arrived Shattered Legion's force, the Night Lords hurriedly withdrew from the Thassos system, abandoning the smoldering wrecks of several warships of their legion. Thirsting for a chance to avenge the terrible losses they suffered on the killing fields of Istvan V, the Shattered Legion's force was offered fresh supplies of arms and munitions and was subsequently tasked by Lionel Johnson with scouring the nearby systems of remaining traitor forces. Deliverance Conjunction 13M31. The vast fleet of the Dark Angels reached the moon of Deliverance in the Kiava system. There, in the fortress of the Raven Guard, Lionel Johnson met with his brother Primarchs Corvus Corax and Leman Russ. The Lion was quick to question Corax's absence from all the major fronts of the war since Istvan V, but his ire was put to rest by Leman Russ, who pointed at the survival of his own legion as proof of the Raven Lord's continuous loyalty to the Emperor. Fully recovered from the wounds he suffered in the Trizolian system, Leman Russ declared that he and all Space Wolves warriors on Deliverance would join the Dark Angels in their crusade of obliteration. To appease the Lion's call to arms, and knowing well the fate that befell those who did not demonstrate loyalty as the first Primarch expected it, Corax offered vast quantities of munitions and supplies from the forge fanes of Kiava to the Dark Angels and Space Wolves, including thousands of newly created suits of Mark VI Corvus power armor. Hesitant to commit any significant portion of his depleted legion to what he saw as an undertaking of excessive violence and needless waste, Corax assigned only a small expeditionary force of his Raven Guard to accompany the Dark Angels in the next stages of their campaign. Few in number, but bearing the experience of 1,000 battlefields between them, the Raven Guard departed Deliverance with orders to eliminate key enemy targets ahead of the Lion's onslaught in order to save entire worlds from complete annihilation. The Ghosts of Zhao Arcad in 13M31. Ambitious to carry the momentum of their Primarch's campaign forwards, an impetuous contingent of the Dark Angels reached the Forge World of Zhao Arcad in the galactic southwest and proceeded to make planetfall at its principal forge fanes. The Dark Angels exited their drop pods and orbital assault transports to encounter warriors clad in the crimson armor of the Thousand Suns, previously thought to have been destroyed at the hands of Leman Russ and his Space Wolves Legion during the burning of Prospero. Emerging from the psi mists obscuring the forge fanes, the Thousand Suns did not open fire on the Dark Angels. Instead, they proclaimed their loyalty to the Emperor and offered to parley. Under orders from the Lion himself to subjugate the traitor Forge World and believing the Prosperine warlocks to be lying, the Dark Angels initiated offensive operations across their landing sites on Zhao Arcad. Determined not to allow Zhao Arcad to suffer the same fate as their devastated homeworld Prospero, the Thousand Sons unleashed their psychic might and the seemingly endless tide of battle automata against the invaders, inflicting severe losses on the Dark Angels. The First Legion forces launched 3 successive counter-assaults in order to push the enemy out of the ever-shrinking landing sites established by the Angels, but each failed to achieve its goals. Hundreds of loyalist lives were lost when Titans from the Legio Xetobiax intervened to put an end to the ill-fated invasion. The remaining Dark Angels hastily withdrew to their fleet and enforced an orbital blockade of Zhao Arcad, awaiting further orders from the Lion.